Thank you, Presiding Officer. I may just be one of a tiny minority of people who benefited from having no contact with the formal careers advice. As a youngster, I was not very well and missed a fair bit of my primary education. And the most important bit that I missed was the classes in learning how to learn from the education system. It's a skill I absolutely flunked. But I was very fortunate to have well-educated parents and to be brought up in a house absolutely full of a diverse range of books, which I simply devoured in random order. I read J.D. Mackey's History of Scotland when I was 5. I read a biography of Lloyd George when I was 7. It probably shows that we are what we read. So my reading and my inquiring mind enabled me to just about muddle through. I'll wait a little, but I will come back to you, to eventually graduate with a modest degree in mathematics. Had I actually had a good degree, I'd have been headhunted for traditional civil service, ICIBP or whatever. My girlfriend, now my spouse of 43 years, was the person who consulted the University Careers Advisory Service, and right at the end of my academic career, the advice filtered to me that I should go into computers. Best move I ever made. But throughout my career, I got there by chance. Neil Finlay.
Neil Finlay.
Given that I know that the member has had a very exciting career and he's been a pilot, a water bailiff and invented the computer, maybe the answer is that we don't give careers advice and we just let them read about Winston Churchill and everything when they're 5 years old?
Oh, no. No. Actually, I use the individual example to illustrate that I've been incredibly lucky by not having the advice, and that luck should not play a part in the lives of children across Scotland, because such a casual attitude to careers advice that was adequate and was good enough for me in the 1950s and the 1960s absolutely is no longer adequate today. There are more careers, there are more prescriptive rules about entry to careers that mean that people need qualifications, they need to have studied subjects. And to do that, you may have 10 years in advance of acquiring a qualification to have had the kind of guidance which I thought Ian Gray talked about from a very informed basis quite early in your career, in a way which I neither got nor, as luck would have it, required. What I think is clear, too, is that having a single skill is risky. And again, Ian Gray made reference to that. We have to learn how to learn, and we have to learn how to adapt. The first law of epigenetics is the more highly optimised an organism is for one environment, the more adversely it is affected by change in that environment. A village that's all in coal, when coal as an industry goes away, perfectly illustrates the risk. And good careers advice can pinpoint potential in a student that those close to them, or even the student themselves, simply isn't going to spot. So today's students are very different from the student I was. Now, they have keyboard skills, they work computers as extensions of themselves. I, again, was typing by the age of 8 and 9, but I didn't use a telephone for the first time till I was 15, which might seem rather odd, but the telephone was a much rarer beast to which I had less access than the computer. The moody teenager wasn't just Neil Finlay, it was me, and I'll bet if we compared photographs I was spottier than him, and that's an unusual claim to make. Actually, the last thing as a teenager that I would have wanted is somebody looking over my shoulder. I was adapted to private study. I was adapted to doing things for myself. And for many children, that's why online systems, comprehensive in detail, timely in content, and this is the key point I think missing from the debate so far, personalised for individuals by being an interactive system. Not as the first websites were 20 years ago when I produced my first one, simply an electronic library with no way to find around. I will.
Yes, there.
The member would rather have an algorithm or a one-to-one conversation.
Rather we indulged in heuristic learning, where the computer adds to the available ways in which we can learn of the needs of the person sitting at the computer, in addition to the interactions with human beings. Computers are going to be part of people's lives to come. The World Wide Web is going to develop and become even more important. Its interactivity is the vital thing. Its ability to guide, to search and to respond to people is absolutely vital. Personalisation is important. And let me just give you one little insight into how we may be making some wrong assumptions about people's relationships with technology. When we, in the Bank of Scotland, that I worked for 30 years in technology, introduced our first cash dispensers in 1980, my brother had developed them for the Royal Bank 3 years earlier, so I was behind him. We found that people would stand in the rain to queue for a cash dispenser rather than go into a bank branch. And there were 3 times higher usage per head of population in Scotland than in England. We did a survey. Why? People would rather not share intimate things in their lives with somebody behind a counter. They'd rather deal with a machine. Now, that's a very narrow, specific example. It need not map to the subject that's before us here. But I think we should not, by any means, discount the electronic world. I'd finally close, Presiding Officer, by just a word about the RAG system. I do feel very disappointed. In essence, what I'm hearing is divert resources from the red group who need it most to the green group who can be more adaptable, can start online and get the human interaction when they need it. Delighted to participate in this very important debate today, Presiding Officer.